Good morning, students. Welcome to today's session. Standard 10, Subject History, Chapter 9, Heritage Management, Module 1. Children, we'll begin with a new chapter today, Heritage Management. But before we begin, let us understand the meaning of heritage. What is heritage? Children, heritage means something that has been inherited. It must, in fact, be considered as a legacy that we have received from our ancestors, what we live with today, and what we have to pass on to the future generations. Now, what is heritage management? Heritage management is the application of management techniques to conserve, preserve, and protect the cultural resources so that they remain a part of our heritage and can benefit the general public. Recovered inscriptions, customs and traditions, folk art and literature, historical documents, old books, artifacts, etc. are our heritage as well as sources of history which help us to understand the history of the past. They are divided into oral sources, written sources, and material sources. Let us now begin with oral sources, literature, which is not in written form but is passed on from generation to generation by word of mouth, is known as oral source. Example, folk songs, folk tales, ovies, etc. Let us now learn about the necessary training that is required. People dealing with oral sources must be trained in sociology and anthropology, social psychology, mythology and linguistics, library science and information technology. They must also have knowledge of history and historical research method. They should also be able to write research reports and articles. Written sources. Children, literature that helps us to understand the history of various historical periods is known as written source. Example, copper plates with inscription on them, official records, personal correspondence and diaries, historical books, manuscripts, etc. People who undertake this work need to have training in scripts like Brahmi, Modi, and Persian. They must have basic knowledge of social organizations, traditions, literature, culture, administrative systems of past societies, etc. They must also know about various schools and styles of painting and sculptural art. They must also have knowledge of the types of paper, ink, and color that is used. They must know about the various stones and metals used for inscription. They also need to know writing reports and articles. Material sources. All artifacts, articles, monuments, or their ruins which provide information about the past are material sources. Example, animal and plant fossils, artifacts, replicas, etc. People dealing with material sources need specific training. They need to have basic knowledge of archaeological method and theory, history of ancient civilizations. They must know the regional sources of materials like stones, minerals, metals, and clay used in the production of artifacts and their chemical processes, knowledge of equipment and chemicals necessary for the cleaning of artifacts and other chemical processes is also a must. Writing research paper and articles is also a skill required by these people. Children, do you know that the sources of history, like the oral sources, material sources, and written sources, and all the history books that are available today, are the result of the diligent work of several historians? Each step, like collecting the sources of history, creating their records and indexes, exhibiting manuscripts, old books, and artifacts after completing necessary treatment requires very careful handling and management. It needs people with specific skills. So, only trained persons who are duly qualified can take up these tasks. Children, have you ever wondered where do these historians go to look for these sources and who maintains these sources? Well, the institutes that conserve, preserve, and store the sources are museums, libraries, and archives. Let us learn about each of these institutes in detail. We'll begin with museums. In olden times, museums were created to organize and manage the antiquities collected by the members of the royal and elite families of medieval Europe. Today, however, museums display as well as preserve the articles related to our rich historical heritage. These museums also undertake necessary treatment for the conservation and preservation of these sources. There are many famous museums in the world. Today, we'll study about a few of them. Let's begin with the Louvre Museum in France. The Louvre Museum in Paris was established in the 18th century CE. The antiquities collected by the members of the royal family were exhibited in the Louvre Museum. It also includes the much acclaimed painting of Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. The collection in the Louvre Museum increased to a great extent when Napoleon Bonaparte brought back different antiquities and articles from his conquests. Presently, the museum contains more than 3 lakh and 80,000 artifacts. The next museum that we will study about is the British Museum. The British Museum was established in London in the 18th century. This museum exhibits the collection of Sir Hans Sloane, a natural scientist, which includes several books, pictures, specimens of preserved plants, that is, herbarium, etc. It also exhibits art objects and artifacts which were collected by the British people from different British colonies. Presently, the museum collection comprises of 80 lakh objects. Another museum that we will study about is the National Museum of Natural History, United States of America. This museum is managed by the Smithsonian Institute. It was established in 1846. It houses more than 12 crore, that is 120 million specimens of fossils and remains of plants and animals, minerals, rocks, human fossils, and artifacts. Children, some of you must have seen the movie Night at the Museum. The majority of the plot of the movie takes place inside the American Museum of Natural History. Now let us study about the famous museums in India. The first one is the Indian Museum. In fact, it was the first museum in India. It was established by the Asiatic Society of Bengal in Kolkata in the year 1814. The second museum in India is the Government Museum. It was established in Chennai in 1851. The National Museum was established in Delhi in the year 1949. Apart from that, we have Salarjung Museum, a famous one at Hyderabad, and the Calico Museum of Textiles at Ahmedabad. Presently, there are several museums in various parts of India. Children, we studied about the museums in India. Some of the museums are affiliated to universities. They also offer courses in museology, that is the science or practice of organizing, arranging and managing museums. Some of the well-known institutes and universities which offer degree and diploma courses in museology are National Museum, Delhi; Kolkata University, Kolkata; Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh; Jivaji University, Gwalior, etc. The next museum that we are going to study about is Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya. In 1904, some influential residents of Mumbai decided to establish a museum in Mumbai. In the month of November 1905, the foundation of the museum building was laid. It was decided that the name of the museum would be Prince of Wales Museum of Western India. Children, this name was suggested to commemorate the visit of Prince of Wales to India. After independence in the year 1998, this museum was renamed as Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya. It has been given the status of Grade 1 Heritage Building in Mumbai. This building is built in Indo-Gothic style. This was the style of architecture used by the British architects in the buildings built in India in the 19th century, especially in public and government buildings in the British Raj and the palaces of rulers of the princely states. It combines elements of Hindu architecture and Muslim architecture with Victorian Gothic architecture elements. Some of the features are buildings with open pavilion, domes, Victorian style staircases, vaulted roofs, lotus motifs, etc. This museum houses about 50,000 antiquities, and these antiquities are divided into three categories: arts, architecture, and natural history. That's all for today, children. We shall continue with the next part of the lesson in the next session. Refer to the PDF file attached below and complete the given work. Thank you.